everyone, and welcome to episode 1 of the fall 2025 video series of Get Rooted in Wellness. I'm Nancy Ely, founder of Witness for Fitness here in Calgary, Alberta. This new series will cover a variety of health-related topics, of course, and considering that right now we are in the process of losing daylight a little bit every day, boy do I notice it, I think the topic for this episode is very timely, and that is seasonal depression. We're into September, and some of you may have already been noticing a difference. You're feeling down, maybe especially in the mornings. Your energy levels are lower. You're struggling to get a good night's sleep. Maybe you're having brain fog, which could be a variety of different things. Your appetite maybe has changed. You're catching yourself feeling worthless or just overall down about things, life in general, right? These are just some of the known symptoms of depression. I went through a period of about 10 years wherein every winter I would suffer from a form of mild depression that went away in the spring. As the years went by, that depression became worse and lasted longer. Just because it's seasonal, incidentally, that doesn't mean it shouldn't be addressed, right? Now, thankfully, I discovered a natural remedy that worked so well for me that the first winter I used it, I didn't feel depressed. Not even once, not even to a small degree. Now, I'm going to get into that a little bit more later. Now, before I take us deeper, it's really important to know that I am not a medical professional, all right? I can't diagnose or advise you on the best approach for your personal situation. Depression can manifest differently from person to person. It really can. And in varying degrees. If it does linger, it can affect your relationship with your family. It can hinder your job performance, can affect you physically, and can drastically reduce your quality of life over time. If you have symptoms that persist for 2 weeks or more, it's time to have a conversation with your doctor. Okay, please don't suffer in silence. You don't need to deal with it alone. Okay, you're not diminished as a person because you do suffer from depression. There are some myths out there, just a mindset, so to speak, that it's a sign of weakness if you're depressed. No, that is not it at all. It is a recognized mood disorder that can be addressed. There are things you can do, right? Like I say, it's not a sign of weakness, and it's quite the opposite in my opinion. Asking for help is certainly a sign of strength. Okay? It's okay to ask for help. Have that conversation with your doctor, because there are medications that can help if you choose that route. If you'd prefer a more natural approach, again, ask your doctor, because he or she may be able to provide you with some resources. I had a very supportive doctor, and he gave me just excellent advice back in the day. Also, it's a good idea to speak with your family. Okay, it's important to open up about what you're experiencing, even and maybe especially when it doesn't make sense. Depression is not something you can just turn off by flipping a switch, and it often doesn't make sense, especially to others. It can also be accompanied by anxiety, and anxiety has no logic to it. Your personality, your entire personality can change. One thing I know from personal experience is that bottling it up over a period of time, and especially long term, can make things worse. Find a safe outlet which can be very beneficial. All right, let's take a look at a couple of things that can help reduce symptoms or maybe even prevent the winter blues. First, Let's talk about a very important vitamin, one often called the sunshine vitamin, and of course that's vitamin D. We get approximately 80% of our vitamin D from exposure to direct sunlight, with the remaining 20% coming from dietary sources. Some of you may have already started your annual regime of taking vitamin D over the fall and winter months. According to the National Library of Medicine, studies show that vitamin D deficiency is closely associated with symptoms of depression and anxiety. Here's an interesting fact. Did you know, this is especially for if you're somebody who stops taking vitamin D over the summer? I don't. I take it all year round. As you age, your skin's ability to make or synthesize vitamin D decreases. Your body needs 15 to 20 minutes typically of direct exposure to sun to get its daily requirement, and that's direct skin exposure. The more exposed skin, the better. Now, with the potential of skin cancer being a valid concern with longer exposure, it makes sense to supplement. That said, even if you did take longer time out in the sun, studies show that the body doesn't continue to synthesize vitamin D after around 20 minutes. Beyond that 20-minute mark, your body isn't producing vitamin D from sunlight anymore. And that's according to the National Library of Medicine. Adults over the age of 65 are at higher risk of a deficiency, and the recommended daily intake is therefore higher for older adults. We need more through diet or supplementation as we age, and according to the Cleveland Clinic, the daily intake requirements are people aged 1 to 70 and pregnant or breastfeeding women, 600 international units per day. And if you're 70 or over, the recommendation is 800 international units per day. That is a baseline amount, and there are mixed opinions out there on what actual daily requirements you need. Okay. Some claim that we need 3 to 4 times these numbers or more. If you have questions in this regard, consult a registered dietitian. I cannot officially advise you on that, all right? Vitamin D3 in particular is important due to the wide range of health benefits that come with it, provided you're taking vitamin K2 and magnesium with it. Very important combination. These three work together to promote better calcium absorption, number one. And K2 in particular has been found to deliver calcium where it's needed in the body, so it doesn't build up in your blood vessels or in your joints. K2 is also believed to decrease inflammation in the cartilage, so it might be beneficial for arthritis. Both vitamin D and magnesium help with restful sleep, and both play important roles in muscle function and may also help reduce restless legs. Do you have restless legs during the night? Maybe take your D and magnesium and K2 in the evening. Okay. On its own, vitamin D boosts mood, as well as cognitive function and immunity, and it reduces inflammation. Inflammation is a whole nother topic, right? And when it comes to our health, according to the National Library of Medicine, oxidative stress and inflammation are known to cause depression and anxiety, both of which are considered mood disorders. Vitamin D is an antioxidant, so it's going to naturally help with oxidative stress. Okay, it's an important nutrient that may help you battle depression and anxiety. Dietary sources of vitamin D include fatty fish, such as sardines. Blech, don't like sardines. Salmon, rainbow trout, tuna, and mackerel. Beef liver. Blech. Again, I don't like beef liver. Mushrooms, egg yolks, cod liver oil, fortified foods such as dairy and plant milks, yogurt, orange juice, and breakfast cereals. I stay away from breakfast cereals because they're typically loaded with lots of garbage. Another thing that has the potential to help with seasonal associative disorder, or SAD, winter blues we tend to call it, is using a light therapy lamp. Daylight lamps mimic the color temperature and the full spectrum of sunlight without the UV rays. Okay, I have already started using mine. First thing in the morning, I sit down for my first cup of coffee of the day, and I'm sitting in front of my daylight lamp for about 40 to 45 minutes every morning without fail. I just have it hooked into my system. I walk downstairs, flip the switch, and turn my light on. And I do find it very helpful. I notice a big difference. Now, let's move on to what, for me, was and still is the number one remedy that brought me back from the brink of being medicated and going on medical leave for depression, stress, the whole bit. You know what that is, right? Exercise. Oh yeah, you betcha. Now, I could go into all of the reasons why physical activity is so good for us. I'm going to touch just right now a little bit on high-intensity interval training. I just watched a video this morning about this, and high-intensity interval training where you work as hard as you can for just a very brief period of time, whether it's 30 seconds with a 30-second to a minute rest, 2 minutes of high intensity, do you know what I'm saying? Maybe a 3-minute rest. There's lots of different ways to do it. When we hit that high intensity interval, there are amazing things that happen in your brain. And I won't go into all of the details, but high intensity intervals, very, very good for your brain, including mood enhancement. Okay. I'm trying to grab the term out of my memory somewhere. Neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, all of those wonderfully healing and fabulous things that happen in the brain when we exercise are amplified with high intensity intervals. Now, again, I could go into great detail on why and how physical activity affects the body, affects our mood, mental health. But sometimes hearing somebody's story has a deeper, more meaningful impact. I can give you all the data, but I'm going to give you my personal story instead. Some of you know my story, and some of you witnessed firsthand my deterioration and subsequent bounce back from the brink. I was this close. It was absolutely so scary. And let me clarify something. Depression, chronic depression, does not happen overnight. I went through a very long period of gradual decline. It wasn't always there either. In fact, it surprised some people when I did start to talk about it, because depression is the complete opposite of my personality. And it often didn't show. It's something over which we often have little or no control as well. Now, for me, there were many contributing factors, and I'm not going to go into much detail here, except to say that there were two specific factors that I was dealing with, and I believe they were the biggest contributing factors. I was suffering from not only depression, but a form of oppression. When you combine those two, that is a horrible combination. It's a nasty mix, and I will say this is very, very important to find people who will listen to you. I mean, really listen, to understand and not constantly try to fix you. They can't fix you. Okay, one thing I did learn, and I realize in hindsight now, is that I didn't know how to communicate what I needed. I didn't even know what I needed in the moment. I didn't understand at all what was happening to me or why. And People kept offering advice, but that's not what I needed or wanted. Now, I don't fault anybody because I understand people wanted to help. But what I needed was someone to take time to sit down and let me verbally process without trying to fix the problem. And the frustration would happen on both ends because I wasn't looking for them to fix the problem, and I would get frustrated, and then they would get frustrated because you're not accepting my help, blah blah blah, and all, I mean, a natural thing that can happen. What I needed was a sympathetic ear more than an advisor. I didn't expect anyone to fix it, and I knew they couldn't. Now, let me just say this. I really wish that I would have verbalized that more effectively. That's on me. But sometimes, with a mood disorder, I was also dealing with mental burnout at the same time. Nasty, nasty combination. So you combine those, and sometimes you just can't think straight, and you can let the frustration boil over instead of just communicating that you're not actually asking for advice. I just need to talk, right? It's okay to say that, hey, I just need to talk it out, and I just need you to listen, and that you don't expect them to have the answers or to try to find the answers for you. People mean well. They really do. But I also was not setting effective boundaries in those situations. And to be honest, I really didn't know how to do that in the moment. I was a mess. I was an absolute mess. Anyway, I did have a very good doctor at the time, which I think I mentioned earlier. And there came a day when I knew I needed to go see him again. And I was terrified. I really was, because I knew what was coming. I was going to be medicated, and I was going to be put on stress leave. I had reached a point where every morning, the moment I woke up, I was bombarded, and I mean bombarded, with negative thoughts about myself. I can't put into words just how scary that was, because I couldn't stop it. I had no control over it. I had never been that low or felt that helpless in my entire life. It really was very, very scary. And again, there were many contributing factors, including mental burnout that I mentioned, and stress for me was a big one. There were also certain aspects of my character that I had shut down over time out of necessity to protect myself. One example of that is that I have a gift. I have a gift of encouragement among many gifts. We all have gifts. Some gifts are more prominent than others, but we all have special gifts. One of mine is the gift of encouragement, and I believe it's one of the reasons I do so well as a health coach and fitness instructor, because I see potential in people, and I love drawing that potential out through encouraging words. When you have a specific gifting or a strength, and it's rejected over and over and over in different life situations, you shut down. At least that's what I did. It became obvious to me that nobody wanted it. So I suppressed that gift. But in doing so, I was pushing myself further down into that well of despair, and I had no concept that I was doing it. I have to take responsibility for some of what was happening to me. I have a very clear memory of the day I was walking down the hallway at work downtown. I was working for the railroad, and realized that I couldn't walk upright. I tried. I couldn't will myself to stand tall, look forward, and walk fully upright. I've shared this many, many times over the past 13 years or so. I was walking with a stooped posture. My head was down. I was looking at the floor. My shoulders were forward. I couldn't physically raise myself up, but it wasn't physical. It was not actually physical. It was a posture of utter and complete defeat. Sorry, I get a little emotional when I talk about this, because I know how close I came. Now, the very next day, which was a Thursday, Wednesday, I'm walking down the hall and I'm like this. I came home from work that Thursday and I was doing something upstairs. I don't remember, probably changing after getting off work, whatever, getting home. And I spotted a brand new DVD that's actually sitting right there. I spotted this DVD that had fallen behind a bookcase. I don't know how, because the box is like 2.5 inches thick. How the blazes it got back there, I have no idea, but there it was. And I recalled purchasing it at Winners that summer. This was November now. It was a walking-based workout, right? And I read the thing and I thought, I'm going to pop it in and give it a try. I need to do something because the winter weight gain had already started. That was another thing I was battling with every winter. And then the summer, you know what I'm saying? That evening changed my life in a matter of 45 minutes. I did the first workout, which was a 15-minute mile. That was easy. I was used to exercise. That was pretty easy. So I popped the next one on, and it was a 2-mile walk, which is about 30 minutes. I loved the instructor immediately. Oh my word, she was so funny. And there was just something about her. And to this day, Leslie Sansone remains my favorite. But by the end of that 3rd mile, 45 minutes, something incredible happened. And I remember it as clear as day. This would have been November of 2011. I still struggle to this day to express what happened adequately because there are no words. I can't put into words what I felt, but I'm going to try. It's the only way I can describe it is to say I had an infusion of joy that welled up within me. Just brrr, and it was so strong that it got into my bones. It was the most incredible sensation I have ever felt. When I finished that second workout, my hands were burning. Like they were burning. I was walking around the room going like this, looking at my hands, going, what is this? I remember doing that. I was like, what is this? It wasn't scary at all. It was the complete opposite. It was like something lifted off of me, and it was the most liberating experience probably of my life. What is this? I never experienced anything like it before. Now, I was used to exercise. I understood endorphins. I understood the mood-enhancing effect of exercise, but this went way beyond the mood boost you get from a single workout, from any number of workouts, in my opinion. Endorphins also dissipate. This didn't. It got even stronger over the next several days or so. And the next day, this would have been the Friday, people were stopping me in the hallways at work. Remember, 2 days prior, I'm like this, and I can't straighten myself up. And must have looked absolutely miserable. My countenance had completely morphed. and people noticed. I had coworkers stopping me in the hallways. Nancy, what happened to you? In the matter of overnight, something happened. I was walking tall. I was confident. I was exuding that joy that I had rise up within me. I was a completely different person. There's a story in the book of Nehemiah when the Israelites just finished rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem. And if I remember correctly, they're having a big party. And Nehemiah states those famous words, "The joy of the Lord is our strength." I believe that's what I experienced, a measure of the joy of the Lord. You won't convince me otherwise. I've never experienced anything like it before or since. I've experienced measures of it, but that first time, I remember wishing, I still wish, that I could impart that sensation to others. I would love for you to experience what I experienced because it really was life-changing. I was completely transformed from the inside out. And again, this was a process that went on for a while. I bought every walk at home DVD that I could find. And that first week, every time I put a DVD in and started the workout, Leslie would come on screen, and I'd just bawl my eyes out. But they were tears of healing, incredibly deep healing. It was wonderful. I was happy to bawl. I looked forward to coming home and bawling with Leslie. Those videos were anointed. And I found out sometime later that the studio that she was in, she had a priest come in and bless that studio. And this is the old Walk Production Studio in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, if you're familiar with the program, because she's got that on one of her videos. They recorded that at the end. The priest came in and he prayed a blessing over the studio. It wasn't long after they had opened it. So a couple of months later, this would have been in, well, a month or so, month and a half maybe, I discovered, this was the end of 2011, I discovered that I could get a certification to teach these classes. Remember I said I just wished I could have imparted what I experienced onto other people? That's probably the biggest reason that I took that certification. That was my first fitness certification. I went to Chicago in April of 2012, April 22nd, 2012. And I got certified, did the written and movement exam, and I haven't looked back. Now that winter, 2011 going into 2012, that was the first winter in over 10 years where I didn't experience depression at all. It was completely gone. No meds. And I'm not discounting medication. I'm not against medication at all. I'm just really glad I found something where I didn't need to be medicated. And there is so much more to this story, and I really hope someone out there is helped by what I'm sharing. I still turn to exercise for my mental health, whether it's a walk in the park, hiking in the mountains, or workouts in my basement studio here. And there is another really interesting thing that happened around the same time that I discovered the Walk at Home program. Remember earlier I mentioned having suppressed that gift of encouragement. When I found Leslie's Facebook page and her Twitter account, after that amazing experience, it was probably within a week or two, I started commenting on other people's posts, building them up and encouraging them. And to my, honestly, surprise, It's a long story, but I was fully expecting backlash for doing it. Not from the people that walk at home, but from others, because I was so used to getting verbally slapped every time I tried to use that gift. People were very, very gracious. They were receptive and they were very grateful. One of the page administrators even responded to a post I did and told me, this was on Facebook, and she said, I quote, "Nancy, you are a gift." That was so meaningful for me. After shoving one of my biggest strengths, gifts, into a corner somewhere, months prior, I had found a safe place to bring it back out and let it flow freely. Now, I've been a person of faith since childhood, and I believe to this day that the Holy Spirit revealed something to me through a series of dreams that occurred over a period of several months or more. I have never had a recurring dream in my life, but I kept dreaming that I had a second property in Calgary. It was a ground floor apartment, fully furnished, ready to use, in the opposite corner of the city. I can still picture it. I can picture it as clear as day. The dreams themselves were not the same. Different things happened in the dreams. They were similar but different. But the apartment was always exactly the same. And in every dream, there would come a point where I would realize, wait a minute, I own a condo. I'm living up in the Northeast. And I couldn't even remember owning a second property or why I would own a second property. And bink, I would wake up. February 2012 comes along. This was before my certification in Chicago, and I had the dream again. But this time, there was something different. Again, this was so powerful in my life. In the dream, I was packing the apartment up. I was packing boxes, and there was somebody there helping me. I've got this all written down somewhere, and off the top of my head, I don't remember who that person was, probably because it doesn't matter who it was. Well, in a sense, maybe it does, because maybe it was a, divine presence. But here I am in the dream, packing, moving things out, giving instruction. This goes here, that goes there, out the door, blah, blah, blah. And I knew in the dream I had sold the property. I didn't need it anymore. So I was packing all the stuff up. The next morning, now this is real time, not in the dream. I'm in the shower, washing my hair, and the details of that dream are so incredibly vivid, and so are many of the other dreams I had over that period of time. I just could not stop thinking about them. They were so vivid in my brain. I remember praying out loud in the shower, washing my hair, Lord, what does all this mean? Why do I keep dreaming about this apartment that doesn't exist? I get out of the shower and I'm toweling off, and the answer pops into my brain. You know that scripture talks about the still small voice of the Holy Spirit? Bink! It's like how to get Nancy's attention, because boy, oh boy, did he have my attention. I can't describe how I sensed this, other than the fact that the thought was just there. I didn't hear a voice or anything like that, but it just came to me. That apartment represents the gift of encouragement. It had been tucked away. It was ready to be used, because that apartment was fully furnished. It was ready to be used, but it was dormant. It was dormant because I had suppressed it, right? I was packing up the apartment in the dream because that gift was now back in circulation. I didn't need the storage space anymore. I don't know how long I stood there, but I was frozen on the spot. It was very profound. It was a profound moment for me. And to this day, I've not had one single dream about that apartment again. I've never dreamt about it again. And like I say, I can picture it as plain as day in my mind, but I've never dreamt about it again. Isn't that interesting? Cool. Now, this brings me to the end of the episode. I apologize. It's a little longer than I had planned. I wasn't sure I was going to share this, but as I got going, I just felt somebody out there needs to hear this for whatever reason. And I do hope you gleaned some meaning out of this for you from this session. And above all, if you are suffering from depression, know this: there is hope. There is hope. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye now.